Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of a Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Hi, everybody.
And welcome to our podcast. In every episode, we like to bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips and techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. And welcome to this particular podcast called Transformative Teaching, which is one of our 7 timeless T's. The mini lesson. Okay, that's intriguing. The mini lesson. I wonder what that's going to be about. But before we go on, it's a big week. It's always a big week.
It's always a big week. Wonderful. We love a big week.
Yes, but I've really been impressed in schools and I've seen wonderful things going on, like children thanking their teachers for such a wonderful year. I went to graduation night, actually, and the Year 7s were so complimentary about their schooling, their teachers, lots of inspiring things that happened to them at school. And I just thought, what a wonderful place school is for students, for every year that they're there. But yeah, great to see them at a graduation night and celebrating all their time at primary school. What about you, Sharon? A great week for you?
Yes, I haven't been in school so much, so by the time people are listening to this podcast, well, even if it's as it comes out or later, in our lives at the moment, the school year is just wrapping up. And so what I've felt quite revolutionary this week, actually, because it's been a week where, because I'm not working in schools so much, it's given me a real run at resource development for our Teachific site. So lots of a whole new sort of section of the website coming out next year in 2021. So if you're listening to this post 2021 and you're interested, check back in on...
You mean post 2020?
No, because people might be listening way into years later.
Yeah, that's true. Because this is kind of a timeless thing, isn't it?
Yes,
podcasting.
Yes. And so, we're really... getting up onto the website resources specifically aimed at Readers Workshop and Writers Workshop, so that there will be easy to source tools and other resources that relate just to the Readers and Writers Workshop for the first year of school through to Year 6. So I've actually really been thriving on that this week, having... time every day to work on that, because it takes a lot of thinking and planning time to get those resources done, and I'm really looking forward to getting them up there and people giving us feedback on how useful they are, because as you know, I'm always adjusting to feedback, but always feel maybe the word is just satisfied when I can actually get some of the tools that I know teachers are really looking for. I can create and get them up there for teachers to use.
So stay tuned, folks, for some resources on the Teachific website coming out your way in 2021 early.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Ready for the school year.
Yes.
Yep.
And also, I'd like to point out that Sharon has just answered key question 1, which was, what have you been doing in schools this week?
Oh, yes.
Key questions 2 and 3 will be asked at the end of this podcast.
Yep.
But that's our first question.
Yes.
Now, the purpose of our podcasts letting teachers in on those special insights, practical tools, etc. And so we hope, and we're hearing feedback that people are really finding our podcast really helpful in a practical way, which is fantastic.
Yes, loved. Love the specific feedback we are getting, and often with questions that let us follow up with and point people in the direction of either other resources or research that they can use to really expand their own professional knowledge and learning. So, love that.
Now, the topic today, transformative teaching, one of our timeless T's, one of our 7 timeless T's, the mini lesson. Now, Sharon, should we talk about the mini lesson?
Well, can I just say before we move on that in transformative teaching, the mini lesson isn't the only example of transformative teaching.
Just one of them.
But we are going to focus in on the mini lesson today and really its potential to transform rather than just be the mini lesson.
Okay, so really get some quality work out of a mini lesson.
Yes, yeah.
And so you had a struggle with your teaching of reading and writing, and this led to the mini lesson?
To really thinking about, and this is the point that I'm sort of trying to make. You know, we can do a mini lesson and we can still not get the outcomes that we're looking for. And that was really where I was sitting, where I was thinking, so this struggle came with connecting my teaching of reading and writing with students actually applying what I was teaching.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that it was at that time thinking about it as a mini lesson. In fact, it was quite counterintuitive to me to think of this notion of mini lesson, because I was thinking, surely the more teaching I'm doing, the more effective that is, and how therefore can a short lesson be better
than a long
lesson? And so when I first, came across this notion around the mini lesson, as I said, it seemed counterintuitive, and surely a teacher with all their knowledge about things was, really needing a big lesson, what I always refer to now as the maxi lesson. And I really felt that, one really good maxi lesson for the week should do the job.
Yep.
But I absolutely had to be very reflective of, okay, I thought I was doing the good teaching, but why are we not seeing, as I said, why am I not seeing? And of course, when a principal asks about it, why are we not seeing, or parents ask about, are we not seeing students applying that, on a regular basis, or knowing how to apply it, or knowing when to apply it, or even ever applying it to the real reading and writing. So they might have been able to apply it if it was an activity that I was doing, they might be able to apply it to that. But why wasn't I seeing it play out in the reading and writing? And so
your bigger question is that we'd like to see what they're learning come out in their real reading and their real writing.
Yes.
That's the litmus test, isn't it? To see if they're really using it in a authentic way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Are they active users of it, and can they understand why they're using it?
Yeah. So it's not just learning this list of skills and then we'll get tested on it and, oh, yes, we can use all our skills because we answered the test correctly. But it's actually how are those children using it in their real reading and writing, which makes me think of we need to be doing lots of real reading and writing in our classrooms.
Well, that was where the penny dropped
Okay.
For me. That was, that's where it clicked, because the challenge for me to think about was, all right, so if I'm spending this much time on a maxi lesson, teaching it, how much time am I giving students to practicing what I'm teaching? And to practice it, that would mean that I am giving them time for the authentic reading and writing that they need to be doing, where these actions can play out. And so all of a sudden the idea of mini lesson clicked, because I thought, it isn't about maxi lesson and then they apply it at some point. It's
who knows when.
Yeah, who knows when. And when am I checking up on that? When am I seeing them doing that? Then the whole idea clicked. So if we want students, and then of course, right in my face comes all of that research around readers, what makes good readers, what makes good writers. It's how much time they are spending doing that every day.
Mm-hmm.
So if they need time every day to practice their reading and their writing, how can I make that practice more focused and relevant and motivating and purposeful? Let me lead students into their practice through a mini lesson. So if I want to give them 20 minutes of reading time to practice, then I can't give a 50-minute maxi lesson. Let me lead in with a 10-minute mini lesson. Let me lead in so that they know what it is that they can be practicing in that reading time. So now it's a focus time. Now it's not just a get your books out and read. It's the mini lesson is letting me introduce and demonstrate what good readers and writers are doing as they are reading and writing.
Invariably to the whole class.
To the whole class. This is actually, I want to share Nancy Atwell's description of a mini lesson.
Nancy Atwell?
Nancy Atwell. So she has great researcher and writer of, now I can't even think of a book off the top of my head, but we can list that in the blog.
Yep.
She talks about mini lessons in this way. Mini lessons are the ritual that brings us together as a community of readers and writers at the start of each workshop. And I'll come back to workshop in a moment. When we come in from the rest of our lives, from lunch or the playground, and we put on the cloaks of readers and writers.
Oh, I love that description.
It's beautiful. It is. It's saying that this mini lesson time is where we are thinking about and seeing and hearing and experiencing what good readers and good writers do as they are reading and writing. So,
and can I just say, when I was started off with my teaching many years ago, I just noticed when I taught a lesson just how many children weren't listening.
Yeah.
Two, didn't understand what I taught. And that was getting down to about 50% of them were actually, getting something out of it. So I had these big questions in my head early on saying, why aren't they actually getting what I'm teaching here? Why aren't they?
So part of that, which we haven't addressed right now, is that a mini lesson, and let's launch into, this in a bit more detail, but I want to just address this now, is that a mini lesson doesn't just come from nowhere. It doesn't come from, it's the next thing, it's the next lesson listed in a program.
Yeah.
Or it's, I don't know what to do today, let me pull something. A mini lesson is determined, and mini lessons live in partnership with what we know about our readers and writers through observation and conferring. So really mini lessons and conferences are pure partners.
Now that's a bit of gold, Sharon. If people or teachers rewind on that, that is a little bit of gold, really, isn't it? That mini lessons and conferring are so connected.
Yeah.
And they talk to each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that when we begin a mini lesson with our students, you know, we're coming to the mini lesson, letting them know what we're about to do and why we're doing, why this matters to them.
Yep.
So when you talked about, you know, students not investing in the lesson or understanding what's going on, I'm choosing the mini lesson for the whole class, and you know, people might be wondering, well, how do I have a mini lesson that suits every child in the class? As readers and writers, there are our mini lessons are such that the practice that they're taking this into the text they're reading, and they are creating, and they're now, it's differentiated by what they're reading and what they're creating.
Because
so
they're
they
doing
take
it at their own level.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we're bringing the action, the reader-writer action or process or strategy to them for them to apply in the way that they are now ready to apply to them.
So is that another bit of gold, that the skill or strategy that you're teaching can be at any kind of level? It's a skill or strategy that can be used at any level. But you can teach it to the whole class.
Yes.
But they can use it at their particular level.
At their level, that's right, wherever they are with it. So it's an entry point for every child.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that, so any action or skill, strategy, process, behaviour that we're teaching should absolutely be allowing students to go deeper and further with that and become more skilled and more competent and more efficient with that.
My big question, Sharon, then is, where can teachers get these skills or strategies that cross over all different levels? Where can they get them? What's a resource, or is this... Are we talking about Teachific here?
Not only. No. But can we actually address that as we talk now? Because I'd rather talk about really some features of effective mini lessons, and that it, as we mentioned before, that mini lessons and conferring are partners.
Yep.
And when Nancy Atwell talks about mini lessons, and she says that this is when we bring students together as a community of readers and writers at the start of each workshop. That term workshop is also a critical part of the mini lesson process, because a mini lesson doesn't live on its own.
No.
And it is part of a bigger process.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that process, because we can't talk about effective mini lessons if we aren't talking about all the things that the mini lesson is wrapped around with. Just like we can't really talk about independent reading or students practicing their reading independently without saying it should be wrapped with mini lessons and conferring. So all of these things are critical parts of that. They don't live in isolation.
No.
And that takes me right back to what my struggle was that when I taught a lesson in isolation, my maxi lesson, and in no way was leading students to know how they could apply that and when they should apply it, and give them time to apply it. In that same way, we have to talk about these things collectively, not just in isolation. But there are features of the mini lesson that we'll talk about that, and just getting back to what you said then, the what. What do we teach? I'll talk specifically about that in a little bit.
Yeah, so we've really talked about mini lesson being very important, but linked with every other part of the lesson as well. But shall we just then drill down on the mini lesson now and look at the features of it?
So I guess
specific.
in summary, though, just what we've said, that it's absolutely about a time when we bring whole class together.
Yep.
We are revealing what we've noticed that they need, and then we're launching into the mini lesson. Is really then launching into, the what we want to bring to them, letting them in on the secrets, and there's an important connection that I want to make to research, and research into the best practices in literacy instruction say that we should be implementing practices that invite students to be active, and active, contributing members of a literate community. And so I really want to preface it with that, saying this is about students. The mini lesson isn't just about me as teacher choosing something. It is about the invitation now to be the active, participating community here in whether it's reading or writing mini lesson.
So the students take action on their learning in this lesson,
Yes.
just as much as is really a big part of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the I'm going to talk about the transformative nature of mini lessons, or what really would be the features of what I call transformative mini lessons, and I'll go through 5 things.
Okay. I like numbers.
You like numbers.
I think.
Yeah, well, I know. As a also as a numeracy consultant, Phil, you would.
Yes. And
I like order.
And things sometimes happen in 3s, 5s, or 7s for some reason. But anyway, we're on 5 today.
We are on 5.
Yeah.
So you have already raised this really important question about what do we teach in a mini lesson? What are what are the things that? So it's all very well us saying, all right, in your readers' workshop you'll teach a reading mini lesson, and in your writers' workshop you'll teach a writing mini lesson. So first up, the what to teach has 2 parts to it.
And can I say that's probably the big burning question, isn't it, for teachers for every day? What am I going to teach today?
Yes.
That's going to really suit my learners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And thanks for just mentioning that again too, because the children reading every day, wrapped with a mini lesson that's an everyday piece too. And so, yes, how am I going to come up with a mini lesson every day?
Yep.
So there are categories that we would think about, types of mini lessons on different aspects of reading and writing that we can really draw on.
That you would do in a regular way. You teach these things, these categories.
These categories would be things that I would be drawing from at different times. In fact, in a week, I can even start thinking about the range of mini lessons that I would teach.
Categories
that I would teach. So, for example, in my reading mini lessons, I would definitely want to have across, it won't always be the same range of things across a week, but I want to plan. I would want to have some comprehension.
Yep.
I would want to have some actions that I take as a reader to ensure that I am reading for understanding.
Yep.
So that might involve some comprehension strategies and may involve some word-solving strategies.
Which once you've taught that strategy in the mini lesson, they would then apply that in their own reading.
Yes.
Or their writing.
Yes. And so any mini lesson that I teach isn't necessarily a one-off. I've done that mini lesson, tick, there we are, it's done.
It might go for a few days.
The mini lesson would definitely be anchored on my good reader chart if it's a reading mini lesson, or my good writer chart if it's a writing mini lesson, because these are actions we are teaching to practice and to integrate into our reading and writing processes that we're undertaking.
Just as an aside, I love that
Yeah.
idea of a chart as one of our tools.
I know it was going to be my tool for the week.
Oh, okay. We'll come to that later. But
Yes.
but I love that you've got that up in the classroom and it's not on an electronic whiteboard where it'll just disappear.
Yeah.
It's there
Yes.
during the week
Yep.
or the weeks
Yes.
for the whole class to see.
Yeah.
And doesn't come down. It's there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And why once they're anchored in that way, number one, students can revisit those regularly. I don't have to teach a new strategy every day. I need to be teaching things so that they can be revisited, and that's where my mini lessons truly become more mini lesson, is because we're revisiting, not always introducing something new.
So the chart is really actually a vital part of this process, because they can revisit that chart,
Yes.
go back to the mini lessons that have been taught and say, I can apply,
Yeah.
that's something I have been applying. I can see it up there in the classroom.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And what we put up there on that chart should be written as an action.
okay.
So if it's the good reader chart and my mini lesson is,
For example,
my mini lesson is a word solving strategy or a word solving action. So what do I do when I come to a word I don't know? If I have made that the focus in the mini lesson and given a specific strategy, then on the chart, my good reader chart, good readers, ... And here's the action. Good readers do this when they come to a word that they don't know.
Yep.
Or a word they haven't seen before. So what strategy they apply. We can say, and that's a word solving strategy. Anchoring those strategies or the things the actions, and wording them as actions. So if you're in a school that talks about learning intentions and wants to have, make the learning intention clear, in our Readers and Writers workshop, it is our mini lesson that's actually bringing to the fore what not just the intention is, but the action is. So rather than having a learning intention that says, we will understand, let's make it an action. Let's have, as a reader or as a writer, this is what a good reader or good writer does. This is the action to take. So
the child knows what action they are needing to take in their reading and writing.
Yes.
It's very clear to them.
Yes.
Their action that they need to take.
And that's what I'm doing as I'm reading and writing. Not as I'm doing an activity or a worksheet it is what I'm doing when I'm authentically reading and writing.
Right.
So that's
A big piece.
A big piece. So mini lessons then, what to teach. So for reading, it might be an early literacy concept. It might be a word solving. It might be something to do with monitoring and correcting. So what do good readers do when meaning is lost? How do they monitor and correct their own reading? So we might teach something about fluency. Might be,
Right.
as we said, comprehension strategies. It might be how we can talk about our reading.
Yep.
It might be talking about our preferences for reading. Now, if we're in Australia, in the Australian curriculum, when we look across literature, language and literacy, and we look at all of the aspects of, like we can look into, say, high-frequency words, and it will say, that students learn how to read, to automatically recognise high-frequency words. That may be a strategy that I teach. So I'm not teaching high-frequency words in isolation.
As a list. Yeah.
I'm teaching how do I quickly recognise high-frequency words as I'm reading
Yep.
to help me read fluently, and to get the meaning quickly. So
So the what to teach is actually in the Australian curriculum.
yes,
So you can go there.
yeah.
Are there other, or do you want to talk about other things later on? About
Well,
resources or-
so good resources for finding
Yep.
possible mini lessons. Those of you that access any of the Fountas and Purnell resources, there's like Guiding Readers and Writers 3 to 6 has years 3 to 6 has huge lists of possible mini lessons
Right.
that you can come up with or that you can refer to. At Teachific, we will have, because I've been trying to condense, make quite manageable and match the Australian curriculum,
Yep.
mini lessons that...
So it's easier to see a list of mini lessons than try and search for them on the Australian curriculum.
Yes, yeah.
Although they will be completely matched to the Australian curriculum,
Yes,
that will be
yes.
easier to see, pick them all up, and also ensure you're doing a balance of categories like you were talking about.
That you would want to cover all of those categories.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
And so how we focus on those over
And all
a
the
year, because we don't want to isolate. We don't want to do, a month's worth of just comprehension strategies. We because all of the aspects of reading we're wanting to integrate.
Yep.
We're not just doing things. We'll just learn some word solving strategies, and then after we've got those, then we'll learn some actions to take for comprehension, and then we'll learn some actions to take for monitoring and correcting. We're actually wanting to integrate all of these strategies, so we're wanting to get a range of those across any week, and across time, so that we're not talking about having a unit of those sorts of mini lessons.
So you're trying to make this manageable for teachers so that they can actually not be overwhelmed by all this and make sure they're covering what they need to cover in the Australian curriculum.
And importantly, remember how we talked about mini lessons partner with conferences.
Oh, okay.
So mini lessons will also guide us into knowing what to look for, what we're looking for when students are reading and writing. So when we confer with them, this will also link in. These sorts of lists should, be nice checklists for us to say, I'm not seeing my students doing this right. So there's the prompt in that list of saying, okay, this is what could be a mini lesson. This is what they're ready for.
I was going to say, you've got your list over there, but you've also got your children's needs on the other side, and you're teaching to the needs of the children, number one, but you're always looking at that checklist to see that you're covering everything over a term.
And I suppose what I'm trying to do with what will be on the Teachific site as a resource is to really fill teachers with confidence in saying, these are the critical pieces that I can draw from. I'm not doing them in an order. But what it will also do is really build expert knowledge about what are the key actions and behaviours that good readers and writers need to be successful and grow.
Fantastic.
So
I think I'm getting it, Sharon.
good.
No comment. All right.
I want to just quickly, because we've talked about reading mini lessons, we would also say for writing that there would be mini lessons associated with how to write imaginative texts, informative texts, persuasive texts, because that's part of the Australian curriculum, that we're writing different types of texts. And so we would want mini lessons that would enable our students to know what actions to take to write a whole range of imaginative types of texts, informative types of texts, and persuasive types of texts.
Yeah, because I think we as teachers can sometimes look at that type of writing and think, well, let's just get a formula for this to teach the kids, and here's a narrative. Here's what a narrative looks like. Here's what a persuasive piece looks like.
Yeah. And
we kind of get into a repeated action on that. And,
yes.
But you're saying we can expand on that.
We can, and I'm pleased because we'll often go for the narrative. We'll often go, we need to write a narrative.
And it looks like this.
When in fact the Australian curriculum, the fullness of it, really talks about students writing a range of imaginative types of text.
Not just
narrative.
Okay.
There's and when we think imaginative, then we're thinking far more broadly. Yep. And of course we can link that, and the reason why I've pulled those three categories out too is because if we're learning, our mini lessons relate to those types of texts, and we're wanting to write in a particular type of imaginative, let's say it's a fantasy, or let's say it's a fairy tale, then we would have our writing mini lessons can relate to that, but so can our reading mini lesson.
Yes.
Because reading and writing are in service to each other.
I've heard that before. You
have. And so our mini lessons, and this is the wonder and the power of it, is that when we teach a mini lesson to our readers, there is also transfer of that into writing. And conversely, what we teach as mini lessons in writing empowers us as readers. So
it's the double whammy, really.
Yeah.
You're really empowering your classroom by strengthening it from both angles. You're coming in at two different angles, but they complement each other.
Yes, yeah. So
and I'm also picking up, Sharon, that the Australian curriculum is one heck of a document, isn't it? It's quite an amazing document.
And we really need to explore the richness of it.
Yeah.
There is a lot to draw from. Loved a few weeks ago working with wonderful group of early career teachers, and we were thinking about what could be mini lessons for readers and writers, and we looked at the Australian curriculum. So teachers looked at the year level that they were working with, and we said, what could be a mini lesson we looked at all the content descriptors, what could be mini lessons? And they went, oh my goodness, everything here can be a mini lesson.
Yep.
More than one mini lesson, everything here. So, but we need to look at that curriculum in its relation to the mini lessons for real reading and writing.
Yep.
And when we look at it that way, we can see how any of the content descriptors really allow us to go, what can I bring? Why does this matter to you as readers?
Yep.
What would you be doing in your reading because this matters? What action would you be taking?
Yep.
What would you be doing in your writing? Scooting on to other writing things. So other writing mini lessons would relate to crafting, so the writer's craft.
Right.
To conventions.
Yep. So these are categories.
Yep.
Yep.
And to the writing process.
Yep.
So, and the writing process, written all over the Australian curriculum, but, are we bringing those lessons then, those mini lessons, to how do I edit? How do I proofread? How do I generate ideas and draft that? How do I? So, these pieces, and of course, it just makes complete sense now to me. When I think back about there I was trying to do the maxi lessons, but if I am doing a mini lesson every day of real reading and writing actions.
And sometimes a repeated mini lesson.
And sometimes repeated mini lessons. And that's 2 mini lessons a day that I'm doing when I can look at what I can cover. I'm covering huge amounts
but
every day.
But even bigger than that, the children are covering huge amounts.
Well,
because they are applying it to their real reading and writing.
Yes. Oh my goodness, we're still on number 1.
Oh, okay. Let's get to number 2 quickly.
All right. So
texts.
So what to teach?
Yep.
Now we've come up. I said there were 2 parts to that, and I'm still on number 1. The 2 parts. So I need to know what to teach. So as expert teacher here, I need to know all of those things that I can draw on from my mini lessons. Second part, and how I said it was so matched to conferring. They're the things that I'm also watching for.
Right. Observing.
So I'm observing. So I need to use so this is a little bit like, so what to teach and what to assess. But my assessment here is as the students are learning. I'm looking now to see what are they doing as they're reading and writing. So as they are reading and writing. And so in my roving conferences or in my one-on-one conferences, I'm looking at how students are applying that and using that information to know what to teach next.
Fantastic. Sharon, what's a roving conference?
Yeah. Can I talk about that? Simple, yes.
Yeah, quickly.
So there's one-on-one conferences when I'm sitting with one child.
Yep.
Roving conference, I am roving around the room looking for particular
behaviours,
actions. And if I've set an action, if we've demonstrated and children are taking into their reading or writing that day a particular action, my roving conference allows me to look at how they are using that.
Yep.
So usually involves maybe a clipboard or my recording sheet, with a checklist of I can very quickly, through a roving conference, maybe sometimes, bobbing down next to a child and asking a question or getting them to show me what they're doing. But that's a roving conference. That's on the feet, covering
so you can
large numbers of students in a day.
I was going to say you're covering lots of students that way, but then you also got the one-on-one conferences. Okay, so there's varied
takes me-
conferences.
Yes.
And so there's two parts to the what to teach.
What to teach.
Yeah.
So that's really my first piece in coming to a mini lesson is knowing what to teach and why what I'm about to teach to students matters to them, and that I can say that. Often I'll start a mini lesson by saying, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And so they know that this is relevant to them.
Now, the Australian curriculum and we can help you as teachers out there with that what to teach.
Yes.
Okay, let's going on to
all right.
number
two.
the big
So really now it's getting to the mini lesson. So as I've said, I want to start this mini lesson by saying why we're doing what we're about to do.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing to them and to the whole class that what we're going to learn, so what action we're going to take as readers and writers, and why this matters. What difference does that make? What does it help us, to achieve? So then I want to demonstrate that. And to demonstrate that action, so I don't just want to tell them, good readers or good writers do this.
Because telling doesn't work. As I was saying before, 50% aren't even listening and so on.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now I want to show how that works with text. So if I'm teaching what a good reader is doing, I'm modelling that or demonstrating that as I am reading.
Quality text.
Yes. Either using the read aloud that I've currently got on the go.
Right.
I don't have to go and find a particular example. It is powerful if it can be demonstrated or modelled from something we are already engaging with.
Because they're already in that world of that read aloud, and you are not taking them off to some other text. You're right in there with that one, and that's got more meaning to them.
That's right.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean that I can't select a read aloud for that day that is going to that allows me to demonstrate something more easily or more effectively, but I'm most likely to be using an example or pulling a text that everybody is familiar with.
Yeah.
Because if I'm using it as a new piece, then then I'm teaching other I shouldn't.
They're struggling with the new understandings of that text rather than that's all done and we can now get onto the real strategy that we're trying to learn.
Yes.
And we're not distracted by other things.
Yes.
So a familiar text is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also means that for younger students that I might not have a ongoing read aloud on the go, and so yes, it could be from a read aloud, or especially when we're looking at word solving processes with younger ones or looking at what's happening with the text, then I want to have an enlarged text that I'm working with.
Yep.
Or if I'm wanting to show how, fluency or how, excuse me, in any of the range of mini lessons, an enlarged text is vital for eyes on the page.
All eyes.
All eyes on the page. And, using my pointer to, have students knowing where to look, what to be doing, how to be doing it, and the thinking. So
also called shared book experience.
Yes. But, yes, I refer to it most often as enlarged text experience because shared book experience is often used as a term by teachers when we read with a buddy.
Oh, okay.
And I want to differentiate that.
It's not that.
To say it's enlarged text. Now, of course, enlarged text can also be used and is very powerful for our older readers.
Yep.
So we might enlarge a piece of text that we are working with,
Yep.
or that's come from another source of, it might be from a content area of some text we're working with, and I want to demonstrate through that. But one of the important pieces about the Read Aloud, of course, is if I'm teaching strategies about how to think my way through, and I'm through a text, if I keep pulling a different text every time to do that, I'm not teaching students how to do the thinking in ongoing text. So I want to keep thinking about what's my purpose, what am I trying to teach, what's the action I'm teaching here. I'm not teaching the action just for this piece of text. I'm teaching the action for students to take into any text that they're working with.
Yep.
So there is one danger in always pulling a new piece of text for that mini lesson, and that is that students don't ever get to anchor themselves in any text. If they're only seeing parts of it, if I'm just reading one little part of it, to say, here's an example of what we do when we come to a word we don't know. If that's just out of context and
some paragraph, random paragraph,
out of nowhere,
Yep.
it's not ever giving students that bigger picture of what we are constantly doing with continuous text.
And why we're actually doing this.
And why we're reading. Yeah. Now, writing also requires us to work with text. So in a mini lesson, the text that we work with, if it's genre, it might relate to that, but working with text means creating the text as we're demonstrating and modelling. So our modelled writing or shared writing, so teacher creating text in that mini lesson, therefore I'm modelling what they will be doing as they're creating text.
Right. Yep.
Or I might have a piece of text that I've written, I'll come back to, I want to show an editing or proofreading strategy. It involves text, and it should involve text that is familiar and that we've been working with.
Yep. So
text is important for that that mini lesson. It's not, and as I said, it's intentional choice of text.
Yes.
But not random.
No. And often ongoing text.
Yes.
Quality children's literature.
Yes.
Or we say tantalising text.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
So text, this is still on number 2.
Yes.
Text and Think Aloud.
And, well, through the demonstration, we are then making, so as we're reading the text or as we are writing, creating the text, we are thinking aloud what we are doing as the reader or writer.
Why is that important?
So that's the demonstration. That's...
Oh, they're seeing what an expert reader or writer is doing.
And hearing.
And thinking.
And the thinking of what processes, what thinking processes the reader or writer, so the action that the reader or writer is undertaking.
Because otherwise reading can be a kind of a hidden thing. When we see a person reading, we don't know the thinking that's going on in their head, do we?
No.
And by a teacher actually talking that out, we're really seeing the thinking that a reader goes through, and that's so important because they have to then, they can then use those strategies in their own reading.
Yes.
Because you're actually thinking it aloud and showing them what's going on in your head. Yes. Yeah.
And so via that demonstration then so the seeing and the hearing of what the thinker is, or the reader writer is thinking, there's the power of the mini lesson. So as soon as I use this example frequently, but every time we hear ourselves saying, good readers infer, and not giving any action on what that means, like what am I thinking? What thinking am I doing to infer?
Okay.
I still don't have an action. To infer isn't the action. What's the thinking that I'm doing? What's the thinking action I'm taking to be able to do that? So infer the character's feelings. What am I doing to that? Let me look at the illustrations. Let me listen to what that character's saying. Let's look at what they're doing so that I can infer what they are feeling about something. So
and then put that on a chart. Yep.
So there is the action. So with any book that I'm then reading or with any text I am creating, I have an action. So these are all hugely transferable. They're not linked to just this book or just this text that we're writing.
Yeah.
And that's
the key.
That's a bit of gold too. That's
because then they're going to use that on any text that they read. I think I'm getting it, Sharon. But we're up to number 3.
All right. So now,
yes,
this is the mini lesson isn't just a to process. Now, what I mean by to is then doing it to T-O children. It's often constructed that way in that gradual release model where we say the mini lesson, that's the to. The mini lesson should be a to and a with process. So as I'm modelling to students, they should be the action and what I'm doing, they're becoming so aware of it that they are actually, and it's anchored, it's quite clear what it is that we're doing, that they are actually already in the process of doing this with me.
As you're doing the mini lesson.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that for some children they will with sooner than others.
Yep.
But remembering that the mini lesson is the entry point for students to be taking this into their own
reading or writing.
Trying it for themselves. The by part. So the to, with, by. I don't want to go straight from to by. I want to give them, so there is some with opportunity here. So they might be withing with me just in their heads. I might be getting a couple of other students to join in with this in some ways, like in shared writing. I might call on particular students to add into what could we add in here, and I might call on particular students to do that who I know need some more practice with that. That's giving them an opportunity to with me before they go off by themselves.
So the withing could be, for the want of a better term, could be still in front of the whole class where they're withing.
Yes.
But it also could be where you've started to let some go off who already know what they're doing, and they can go on to the by part.
That's right. Yep.
And
but there is to the bypass.
And then
the by part.
By part, and then but you then would be holding back a group you would do some more with work with. Yep.
So I should be able to this is another opportunity for me to we talked about conferring before, but this observation, my mini lesson will actually let me see quite quickly who's getting that.
Yep.
And if it's a review type mini lesson, I can review quickly and let those who are ready to go.
Yep.
And what are they going to? They're going straight into their independent practice of that.
Yep.
But the width, I can build that into the lesson, a little bit of whiffing. And yes, for those who are not ready to go off by themselves, I can see Phil, you, Anne, you, Shambu, you.
Yep.
I want you to stay with me, and we're going to do a little bit more together before moving off. So there I've got a flexible grouping.
I was going to say that's the real grouping, isn't it? The real needs-based grouping.
Yeah.
Instead of having fixed groups in your classroom.
Yeah.
We might
and sometimes I will ask students too, who's ready to go?
Yes.
Who isn't?
Great.
Yeah.
Going on to number 4, supporting students.
Okay, so number 4 is really now getting to the independent practice.
Okay.
And you know how this seems like a very long mini lesson we've just done right now?
Yes.
That's where my life, as the teacher, how could it possibly be a mini lesson? It needs to be a maxi lesson. I'm feeling this is turning into a maxi lesson. Anyway, so number 4 is really the independent practice part. So if the mini lesson isn't followed by the independent practice part, then I've just lost all my teaching power.
Yep.
Because right now that's what should precede the independent practice time.
It's like
each time.
You've done a demonstration to someone on how to ride a bike, but now you're letting them actually ride the bike.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the mini lesson precedes the independent practice.
Yep.
So now, they've got the dedicated, the chunk of time now, 2/3 more than what has just preceded.
It's the large part of your literacy block.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
So now that practice time, and they're heading off, it's on the chart.
Yeah.
And they're heading off knowing that that's what they're going to practice in their reading that day.
And it's a good time, I guess, for you
or writing,
for the teacher to start conferring in that time.
That's right. I may have a small group that I'm holding for a little bit.
Yep.
Then once they've been, and I don't want to hold them for too long. I can't keep taking up their time for independent practice.
Yep.
So, and because I'm choosing my mini lessons based on student need and observation, I should have it pretty right.
Yep.
But of course, I can hold that group. I might hold them for, say, 10 minutes as a, as a small group focus. But I only want to hold them for that time so that they've still got time to practice independently with their own texts as well. I should have them well set up to be able to move, and they should have their just right books if it's reading, or their texts that they're creating. They should have many things in place. I'm just, the mini lessons, giving them a bit more power to move into that with, greater level of success. So the time, if I've got another 10 minutes there, that could be my one-on-one conferring time with a couple of students.
Yep.
And my conferring, and we'll have another podcast just about conferring, because the conferring will, in fact, take a very similar structure to what I'm talking about here. So in the mini lesson, we talk about observe, decide what to teach, then teach, and then have a goal for that.
Yeah,
and in conferring, we would have the same sort of structure.
And we will go into that because all of these areas, I think we could go in deeper, really.
Yes.
And then number 5 is sharing.
Yes, so for really,
just quickly,
for the learning to really be fully transformative, we want to bring the whole class back.
Yeah.
not necessarily to the floor, but bring them back as a community at the end of the reading, writing time to have the opportunity to share. Doesn't have to be a whole class share out, but every child, it could be through turn and tell, turn and show, turn and talk, and every child should have 60 to 90 seconds to be able to share and talk about and tell or show someone else, so a partner, how they use that.
So every day,
Action.
every child gets a chance to share.
Yes.
In that way.
Yes.
Which is even better than, I mean, the other way is to find 2 or 3 children that are really on track with something and get them to share to the whole class or to a group.
Yes.
But, I mean, that's still valid, but...
it's still valid and important, but every child every day should have
a time to share.
And research tells us that it is it's a hugely underutilised strategy for deepening learning and understanding.
Fantastic. We can go into that one at another time as well.
We can.
In fact, I think we might wrap that up now, Sharon, and get on to our 2 other key questions. Question 2, what's a good tool?
Oh,
and we've actually
covered that one.
Yeah.
So that those anchor charts, the good reader chart, the good writer chart. I will just add, they don't have to. I've had teachers. I just love how they've set this up, not only as charts, but as like an A3 visual arts diary, or just A3 pages stapled together. They've made a book of good reader strategies, and so they've, they'll have, 4 or 5 strategies being worked on at a time on a page, and then they'll start a new page sometime later. So it doesn't have to be on a chart.
So a book is good because the kids can go back to that book to refer back to past strategies.
And it's large enough, as an A3 size, it's large enough for that to be open, during the mini lesson, to add to it, and for it to be visible as students move back to independent practice.
Could even be on a big book stand.
It could.
Yeah.
It could.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
And then question 3, what's a tantalising text that you've been using recently?
Oh, okay. Well, this text, and I know I've been doing some categories of text in some of the podcasts, but I am back to a specific text this time. It's called The 3 Questions by John J. Muth. It is a story based on a story written by Leo Tolstoy called The 3 Questions, but in the Leo Tolstoy version, it doesn't have animal characters. There's a lot of differences to it, so it's based on. But this book, this is a really powerful text to use in really getting kids thinking deeply about being a friend, and being, well, it starts this way. There was once a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the right way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. And so the 3 questions that come up, and so in this book, the questions are asked of 3 animal friends. But the 3 questions are: when is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? They're extraordinary questions, and so really for years 3 up, it's
powerful.
It's such a powerful text, and I think I said it's really about being a good friend, but it's really about being a good person. It's really about insights into knowing what I love about this is that there are 3 insights given each time. So the 3 animal friends are asked the same question each time, and they're each give their own insight into it. So I love it from the perspective of multiple insights that are given, and how when we ask questions and when we discuss things with others, we learn so much more. So it's an example of a really deep learning text that not only can we learn from the text, but is a great one to prompt and promote further discussion and thinking. And when the 3 animals each give their responses, for us to think, now what would our response be to that? So it really is, and when we look at the literature strand of the Australian curriculum, and where it's really asking us to think deeply about the messages and ideas within texts, this is really what I call not just a tantalising text, but can be quite a transformative text in getting us thinking as a community of learners in our classroom and as a community of people. You know, what are the things that we think about, and how does that inform how we act and how we see the world? So fantastic. John J. Muth does a beautiful job of, asking some very philosophical questions for young thinkers.
So it could be that we call it transformative text instead of tantalising, or both. I'm not sure.
Or just fabulous, just good text.
Yeah.
This is and it's got beautiful language in it, beautiful ideas, lots of a book that can really be discussed and explored and considered.
And a picture
time
book as
and
well.
time again. It's a picture book, yes.
Beautiful illustrations.
Beautiful illustrations.
Yep.
The 3 questions.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we might wrap it up there. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We've loved that you have been able to listen to our podcast.
Yes.
And from all corners of the world. Please write into us on our Q Learning website on the Contact Us page with any questions or ideas you have you'd like to explore. We have a weekly newsletter that comes out through MailChimp, and that gives you advance notice of our blogs and podcasts, and we'd love to have you on our mailing list. You can do that on our Q website as well. And subscribing to our podcast on your favourite platform. Please join us on that. Well, thank you so much to Sharon, our co-host today. And
I got the Sharon that time. It was
Now, my little fun bit at the end to say teacher in a different language. I'm doing Italian today. Insegnante, teacher or school teacher or master or mistress. Or you can say il maestro or il professore. That's for professor, teacher or schoolmaster. Anyway, bit of fun there. So thank you everyone for listening today, and I hope I got my pronunciations right.
Yeah, I could see you were worried.
Yeah. Anyway.
Had you practiced beforehand?
Signing off, everyone, and
have a wonderful week wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
And please join us next week. We are going through the holidays every week during the holidays. We'd love you to be on it listening to our podcast. So thank you very much. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.